welcome to our Back to School webinar series. What we're covering today is the program that DJ mentioned, Reveal Math, but this one is for grades 6 to 12. Thanks for being here. I'm your moderator today, so I'll be moderating the session today along with my colleague Hamad. And we're in the background if you need any kind of support, or if you need any technical assistance, or you're facing any kind of trouble during the webinar, please do let us know in the chat box. We're happy to help you out here. We have with us today DJ West, who is the National Director of Professional Learning. Thank you, DJ, for being here with us.
Thank you, Shirish. And I mentioned this earlier, but I need to get a new picture. There's a little more gray in mine now.
We're going to amend the picture for next webinar, hopefully, yes. I've got mine taken, so I'm going to have them amended as well. Except okay. I look older with gray hair as well.
No, you don't. No, she doesn't, but that's okay.
Okay, I know Zoom is a very popular platform and you're very aware of how it works, but I'm just going to go ahead and quickly remind you that this session is being recorded. So a lot of people who are going to ask for the recording, just make sure you check your inbox with the email address that you've registered, and you will have the recording of this session in your email. Along with the certificate as well, a certificate will be for participants who are attending the live webinar. And some people did mention that they could not see the screen. So just make sure any high bandwidth apps are turned off on your computer or in your house, like Netflix, YouTube, any gaming platform that might affect your connectivity for the webinar. And we want to keep this as interactive as possible, so you can chat with us in the chat box, share your thoughts, comments. Equally, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A box and we can pick it up towards the end of the session. Unless there's anything for me, I can stop sharing now and pass over to DJ. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, and then a couple things that came up, George, I totally agree with you. Ladies, like Shirish, only look younger and we men only look older. I don't know how that works, but it does. And then George asked a couple questions. I'm just going to answer them right now, and then we'll get into the presentation for today. Is there a recommended number of days per unit? Yes, and you will find that in the teacher edition laid out by lesson. It also includes the review and assessment. And is everything in the student book also in their online version? And again, the answer to that is yes. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and take a look at this. Now, let me go ahead and share my screen. And then I'm going to flip over here just to get started. We're looking at Reveal Math. We're going to look at grades 6 through 12. Just so you know, it will be called Course 1, 2, and 3. That's typically 6th, 7th, and 8th. There is also an accelerated version that goes at grade 7. And usually what they do then is Course 1, accelerated in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. You're also going to see Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. The layout of the program is the same for these, so we'll get in and take a look at those in detail. What my goal is this morning, as we have an hour together, is to do this. I really want to walk through the layout of the program from a unit lesson, wrapping up a unit structure, talking a little bit about assessment. We'll blend the digital into that, the way the digital interacts with the print material, so you get a good feeling how the two go together. Okay. That's the main goal, because that's the most important thing at the beginning of the year. I will touch on assessment briefly, but we're not going to go into a lot of detail around the assessment. Now, I'm going to click over to the digital just for a minute. This is the dashboard. I'm in course 3, which is typically 8th grade. And during the session, 5 or 6 times, I'm going to ask you to jot some things down. You can do this with, digital notes in your computer. You can do it on paper, pencil. The things I'm going to ask you to jot down are, to me, some of the most important information that you need about the program. This is the very first one I'm going to ask you to jot down. The digital material is organized at 3 levels: program, module, lesson. So if I'm looking for a module assessment, I'm going to find that at the module level. If I'm looking for an explore activity inside a particular lesson, I'm going to find that in the lesson. But I want to click this open. You're going to notice on my screen it says browse your course. When I click this, I'm going to see some program blades. So any news and updates we do, an overview, and then my course materials. Then I'm going to see my modules that make up this program. And then if I open any module up, I will see the lessons that are in there. So if you remember that program module lesson, you can find anything in the program very quickly based on that. We're gonna do that throughout the morning as we jump in here. The thing I wanted to mention though, if you click into the program overview, you're going to find a couple resources that will support the training we're doing right now. So under getting started, you're going to notice kind of welcome. It's just a quick overview of the course. But the one I really want you to jot down along with that structure is this Reveal Math Quick Start course. This is an e-learning course. You can go in here, you can jump, and even if I click in, I'm going to open this one up just really quickly. This is done by our professional learning group. This is the Quick Start module, and you're going to notice here an overview, explore your materials, the digital walkthrough, walking through a module, and assessments and reports. You can click into any of these sections. So this is meant for a quick review for you to be able to go in and explore the materials, much like we're doing this morning. So you're going to get, Sherish is going to send you afterwards the recording. You're going to get that. You also have this built into the program right here to support you, and then the role of the teacher in Reveal Math. So those resources are there. And then if you go into the course materials, and I'm going to scroll down, you're going to see a blade that says professional learning resources. Again, our professional learning team has put these together. My quick start can be found in here again, right here. But you're also going to see a whole other series. For my administrators, there's an e-learning course in here on Reveal Math 612. There's a course on assessments and reporting. So if you want to do a deep dive into the digital assessments, and then also how to do the report information, you're going to have that. If you're newer to teaching your grade level, you're going to see this piece Behind the Math, done by one of our authors, Dr. Nevels. He actually goes through and looks at the foundation of the math in each unit in the course. And then some by our others, Productive Struggle, you're going to see formative assessment probes. You're going to see some materials on our Ignite activities right here, the video library on Ignite. All of these great resources for you to review the program on your own. Let's click back to the dashboard. And just as a quick reminder, when I click this open, program level, module level, open a module up, you'll see all the lessons. Those professional learning resources are found in the program overview with the Quick Start, and then the Quick Start and even more detailed information under professional learning in the course materials. Now, I'm going to jump over and let's jump into the program, okay? So this is a blended approach. You are going to have the 2-volume student print piece and your teacher edition, but you're also going to have everything that's in print digital, and then much more than that digital. What you're seeing is one of the modeling tools that we have built into one of the activities right on the screen. These are meant to be used along, even if you're using the print, okay? But everything in print is digital. Couple quick things just to note about the digital. I mean, it is meant for your style of classroom. So if you want to be a little more traditional, use the print. If you're using the print, please use the digital modeling tools that are built in that are meant to use to go along with the lessons. You could do it all digitally if you wanted to. The student book has an interactive version in the digital that students, wherever they could write in the print book, they can interact in the digital book. And then you're going to see that hybrid opportunity, kind of the nice spot where all that meets together. Couple things about the digital, because this is really important for the high school and middle school, is that this will work on any device. And more importantly than that, whatever device they open it up on, it reflows for the device. So if they open the student book up on a phone, it's going to reflow that to fit the phone. It's not going to squeeze it in where the student's pinching all the time. They're actually going to be able to have a usable experience regardless of the device. And then this is the second thing I want you to jot down. There is a free app that goes with the digital. So if your school or building or your district bought the digital for the students, there's an app called the Read Anywhere app. You can get it on the App Store or Google Play. The biggest thing about the app is it allows offline access to the ebook and to the personalized practice, and I'll point that out to you. But it really is about having offline access to the ebook. When they go back online, it syncs back their work. And the image you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen, that's actually a screenshot I took on my phone. That's what I mean about it re-imaging for the device. So you notice that's very usable on my phone screen, and it doesn't look at all what it would look like on my computer screen because of the display space, okay? One last thing about the digital, it does work with Google Classroom. You can link it to your Google Classroom if you're using that. You can share any assignments or any assessments with Google Classroom. And we're even working on a deeper level integration. Hopefully that will be ready by the first of the year. So that's coming, but just a couple things about the digital allowing you to do that. Okay, so let's jump into the program itself. Remember, it is a module lesson program. We're going to start out at the module level. One thing I want you to notice about the screen we're looking at, just to start with, you're going to see an opening with what will you learn. You're going to see each of the lessons. You're also going to see a little, under some of the lessons, a little orange explore. This is the third thing I want you to jot down. The explore activities are web modeling activities. They actually use Geometer Sketchpad, a web version we created. Please do not skip these. The explore activities allow the students the opportunity to develop conceptual understanding by playing with the mathematical concept. I'm going to show you an example of one of these when we get into a lesson, but please don't skip them. If you look at the table of contents at the very front of the book, or when you get into it, you're going to see these highlighted again. Many lessons will have one, not every single lesson, but many lessons. At the unit level, we're going to start every unit out with an essential question. This one, how can you describe how two quantities are related? It's a grade 6 lesson looking at ratio and rates, but that essential question, if they can answer that at the end of the module, they have a broad grasp on the conceptual understanding of this topic, okay, of ratio and rates. So looking at how those quantities are related. You're going to see a few other things I would recommend at the module level. Now, this is just a screenshot of the teacher's edition. You're going to see all the things you would expect to see. My focus, looking at the domain, the major clusters, the standards, and the mathematical practices. I'm going to see my coherence. What did we do in previous grade levels? What are we doing now? What are we going to do next? And then you're going to see the emphasis on rigor. What do we do with conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and application? You're also going to see from my new teachers, this little highlight, be sure to cover. And what that means, that's a topic in this module that they're going to use again and again and again. Underneath that, George, this went to your question, the suggested pacing. So you notice we have it both in a single period and a block schedule guidance. This is important to note and reveal that every lesson is not a single class period. In fact, if you look at this one here from 6th grade, what you're going to notice is that lesson 1 is meant to be 2 class periods. Lesson 2 is 3 class periods. How do we determine that? Based on the amount of standards coverage and concepts that we're developing in that lesson. So we didn't try to cram every topic into one day. We actually spaced it out. You're also going to see a little thing in that pacing that says put it all together. That's a little quick kind of review assessment that covers all the concepts in those previous lessons. So you'll find that in the assessment engine. You're going to notice there's a second one after lesson 8 that kind of combines the ideas from 6, 7, and 8. In the pacing for the module, we include the module review and the assessment. So you're going to notice total for this module, it's about 20 days, about 4 weeks. We've got opportunities for quizzes and everything like that built in, but we want to make sure that we give enough of time to cover it appropriately. One other thing for you to notice about the course, we don't pace these courses at 180 days because we know typically you don't have that. So it does give you some wiggle room in there when you need to spend a little more time on the idea, okay? So it'll take you in here. You're going to be able to see all those headlines when you walk through it. Now, a couple things for the students at the module level. You're going to see all the way from 6th grade to Algebra 2, we do a quick self-assessment at the beginning of the module. Again, this takes only a couple of minutes. I would, again, strongly suggest you do it. Puts a little student ownership into the topics. So in this module on ratios, you can see the 9 different topics we're going to look into. Students, I know it, I don't know it, or I've heard of it. And then when we get to the end of the module, we're going to come back and reflect on that. Again, just a little bit of ownership, kind of anticipation guide about what we're getting ready to learn. And then there are 3 different pieces built into the module level, each for a unique focus. First of all, every module has an Ignite activity. Notice in the module on ratios, this is our Ignite activity. This is actually one of my favorites. When you look at this, Hector and his sister Luciana each made a glass of chocolate milk. Hector mixed a greater amount of cocoa powder in his glass than Luciana did. Luciana claims her milk has a stronger chocolate taste. So we have a picture of Hector's glass and Luciana's glass. Now we've got, what do you notice? What questions can you ask? Now this is the beginning of the activity. It actually builds out a little bit, but I want you to notice a couple of the things right off. One, we can't really determine who has the stronger chocolate taste, because when I start to notice, I don't notice, what do I notice? Or what question can I ask? Well, I notice that Hector has more in his glass than Luciana did. And in fact, it looks like he has, more than twice as much, if I'm just estimating, or maybe he has twice as much. But some of the questions I can ask, how much powder did they put in? How much milk did they put in? Okay, there's a lot of things that I want to know about this that aren't given to me. So you'll note they actually can't come up with a solution, and it's not the intent. The intent is to raise curiosity about the topic they're getting ready to go into. These are all written by Dr. Raj Shah, the co-founder of the Global Math Project, one of our authors, really focused on igniting activity or igniting engagement or curiosity around this. Now, you may decide not to do the Ignite activity every module. I personally would, but I'm going to tell you this, do it at least every other module. And the reason I say that, I find classes that I work with, this is something they skip because, well, it's not directly, but I tell you what, if we don't get students engaged in the math, we're going to struggle with their understanding. So it really works with that. The other thing about the Ignite activity you might want to jot down along with it is refer back to this while you're going through the module. So when you start uncovering ideas that really would help me know what to ask, I can bring it back. Would this have helped us in the situation with Hector and Luciana? Now, a couple last things to know about this. Oh, that's not going to show up. There it goes. Okay. The other part at the module level that you might want to use to launch the lesson is we built in a real-world scenario video. I always hated the question, why do I have to study this? When am I ever going to use this as a math teacher? This relates whatever topic you're looking at through 2 or 3 scenarios to real-world applications. So this one is on ratios.
Have you ever wondered how many peanuts it takes to make 1 jar of peanut butter? It takes about 540 peanuts to make 1 12-ounce jar. Imagine taking off all of those shells. There are many different ways to describe the relationship between the number of peanuts and the number of ounces of peanut butter. The relationship can be written as a statement: 540 peanuts for every 12 ounces of peanut butter. It can also be written as a fraction, shows how these quantities relate. During prime feeding months of the year, blue whales can take in as much as 5,500.
Now, you notice I jumped ahead, and the only reason I did that, one scenario is fine, but we're going to show them 2 or 3 different ways that you use ratio in real life situations. And it goes to that question, why are we studying this? So that's at the beginning of the module to be used with that material. Okay. And then one last piece at the module level that I want to mention, this does not happen at the beginning of the module. You'll see it identified at point of use in one of the lessons. And in fact, if you look at the table of contents, you'll see it identified as the math probe. This addresses one of the major misconceptions that happens in that module. It's always 3 parts. It'll always be a visual. So there's a scenario so we set up, determine which graphs, if any, can represent each equation, select all that apply, or none of the graphs if they don't represent it, or if you need more information, put more information. So here you'll notice y equals 4/5 x plus 7. Is graph A, B, C, or D? None of these, or I don't have enough information. So they make their choices and then explain why they chose those. So it's an opportunity for you to do that. Now, if I looked at the teacher edition that goes along with this, it's going to always be 3 parts. Let's analyze the probe. So take a look at it before you use it. Have the students do it. You're going to notice even here in your teacher edition, assign the probe after lesson 6. Okay, we're then going to collect and assess the work that they did. And when we do that, let me back down just a minute. You're going to notice here on the bottom of the screen that if they only choose either graph A or D, but not both, then here's what their understanding is. Here's where their misconception is. So it actually points out for you what the error is. And then it's going to give you some suggestions for students to actually recover this idea. So anytime we do assessment, you're going to see the suggestions for that. So if you think about what we said at the module level, number 1, we have that self-assessment by the student. Number 2, we have the Ignite activity to get them thinking and developing problem-solving strategies around the idea we're going to look at. Number 3, we have the real-world video that actually gives scenarios where the math is used. And then number 4, somewhere in the unit or in the module, we have the probe, and it's focusing on one of the major misconceptions. What we're going to do for just a second is we're going to go over to the digital, because when you think about this, I already told you the Ignite activity is not in the student book. I want you to know where to find all of these things. So if I flip back to the digital, we're still on the dashboard. You're going to notice on the dashboard, here's my menu of resources, including my assessment tab. On the right-hand side, I have my different ebooks. So my teacher edition, there's a Spanish version over here, the interactive version that matches their print. So wherever they can write in the print, they can interact. And then there's just a static version of their print book. Can't type in it, but if you want to project on the board exactly what they're looking at, that's what that's for. You're going to see some additional resources. My e-toolkit is a series of modeling tools. Whenever they're in something and they need a tool, it'll be built in. But if you want to highlight something, you can click this open at any time. I'm going to go full screen with it. As that opens, you're going to notice a number of tools. I really like the timer and the stopwatch. I use the timer often when they're doing an activity. But what I don't want you to miss when you get into the toolkit is this little plus sign here. So when you click on plus, it's going to come up and show you a few more general tools, my sketch tool, my number line. But where it says general, and anytime you see a caret icon, if you click that, you've got some tools for algebra, for geometry, for number sense, for statistics and probability and functions. So like if I click into geometry, I've got a transformation tool, a construction measurement tool, my 3D figures, 2D figures, and so on. Geometry sketch, all of that built in for you to use. But it's, again, if you need something in an activity, it'll be built in. If you get into one of these and don't know how to use it, right next to it is your user's guide. Okay. Just a really helpful piece. And then below that, what the student dashboard looks like, and then a click through of the digital that will support you after we get done here today. You have your calendar. I'm going to actually ask you to jot this one down. The calendar is very important if you and your students are using the digital together. Okay, here's why. Anything that you assign will show up on your calendar or the student calendar. And anything you put on the calendar will show up here as a lesson resource. And it will show up on your students page. So it provides a quick link on their dashboard of what's assigned and resources you want to get them to get to quickly. What's the difference? If you assign it, you can review the work. If you just put it on the calendar, still creates the quick link here, but you won't be able to review the work. Okay. So if it was an activity, I don't really want to see it. I just want them to get to it quickly. I'd put it on the calendar. If I want to go in and really look at it, then I would assign it. Now, here's why I came back here, though. We've been talking about these module resources like the Ignite activity or the math probe. Remember, I said at the beginning, The digital resources are organized 3 ways: program level, module level, and lesson level. So I'm in course 3. We're going to jump into this module right here on linear relationships and slope. I'm going to click on that module. It will take me to the module level. Notice here, if I want the background information on this module, I can click it open. What's the goal? What's the suggested pacing? There's that whole pacing guide right in here for the module. What are my domains and clusters, my standards, my vertical alignment, my vocabulary, and then I can hide that. I'm gonna collapse all these blades, and I just want you to see what's here. Launch, review and assess, and additional resources. When I click open my launch, it's a family letter. Here's my Ignite activity and my Ignite activity teacher guide. So all the details for this Ignite activity. If I scroll down a little bit more, I should have mentioned this earlier. Here's my module pretest. This pretest looks at prerequisite skills needed for this module. My launch to module video, a problem-solving strategy, and then if I open up review and assess, here's my formative assessment probe we talked about and the teacher guide for it. This teacher guide is in your teacher edition, but it's here as well, just as a separate piece. Some of my personal tutors will take a look at these in more detail. My module review, my dynamic module practice, and then when I get down, all of my performance task, and then all of my assessments. Now, this is a note to jot down since we're here. For the module assessment, you're going to have 3 versions of the on level, form A1, A2, and A3. If I scroll down a little bit more, you're going to see a B and a C level. The B is an approaching level. The C is a little more advanced level. You have them both in the digital. That's when you see the bar graph and it just says assessment. You're going to have them in Word. So if you want to edit them paper pencil, you can. And you're going to have the teacher background for it. So that's your answer key with all that information that goes along with it. All of that at the module level, but really the pieces we talked about, the Ignite activity, the pretest, the launch video, and then down below, that formative assessment probe is right here. Okay. Whenever you open this up, like, and let me click this over here, scroll down just a little bit. You're going to notice, use this after whichever lesson. Now that lesson will change, but it's going to allow you to actually know when to use that piece. All of that starts out the module. In order to get students acclimated, the probe happens at point of use. Okay. Now I'm going to check over here real quick. Okay, good deal. And then let me check right here. Yeah, actually, when you create a test, that shows up when you assign it. It shows up on the dashboard, just like those other assignments. And in fact, when I click back over to my dashboard for a minute, you're going to notice there's an assessment right here, both a benchmark assessment and a placement. Your course assessments will show up the same place. And they will not only be on mine, they will also be on the student dashboard. Okay, now I'm going to click back over and let's jump into a lesson. So the lessons are 4-part lessons. Launch, I'm always going to have a launch. We're then going to explore and develop the math. We're going to reflect and practice. We're going to assess and differentiate. Now, if any of you attended the K5 session earlier, Miriam, I think you did, you're going to notice this is the same lesson structure, just happens a little bit differently in the pieces. So we're always going to start with a launch. We're going to explore and develop. We're going to reflect and practice, and we're going to assess and differentiate. That assess and differentiate here means at the lesson level. So let's take a look at what this looks like. This is my teacher edition. You're going to see the lesson plan is broken down exactly the same way as I just mentioned. What's my lesson goal? Let's launch it. Let's explore and develop the math. And you're going to see in here, when we get in, that the explore and develop has a number of pieces. There are explore activities, there are learns, there are examples, there are checks, and then you're going to see the apply piece right here. We get to reflect and practice. We have an exit ticket and the practice. And when we get to differentiate, we have a number of resources based off of the lesson assessment that we can support students with. So you're going to see the remediation review resources, the Arrive Math Take Another Looks, the extension activity, and the collaboration strategies. So we have a variety of pieces that are built in here. You're also going to see your focus, coherence, and rigor for this lesson. So here we're looking now at more what's happening in this. Now I switched over on you, kind of bait and switch. I went to an 8th grade lesson. This would be laid out all the way thing for 6th grade Algebra 2. Okay. When we get into that lesson, you have 2 pieces you can use to start the lesson. Number 1, you have a warm-up. The warm-up is working on procedural fluency. Okay, this is like the number routine in K5. It's always going to deal with a prerequisite skill. You can have it up on the screen when they walk into class and actually have, okay, guys, do the bell ringer. It's not in the book because it's meant to be discussion oriented. Okay, what did you get for 1 minus -4? So you notice we're dealing with adding and subtracting negative numbers. So what does that do? It's going to tie into what they're doing in linear equations. So remember, this is prerequisite skills. It's a great piece to use. The actual launch, though, into the lesson is simply called that. It's called the launch. And in this one, we're getting ready to look at a slope of a line. So my launch is one of the tallest roller coasters in the United States is the Millennium Force, located in Ohio. Passengers on this roller coaster experience speeds up to 93 miles per hour and a 300-foot drop. Now, you'll notice on that 1 and 2 at the top, right above launch the lesson, there's a second screen that actually gives them some figures, but we're introducing the idea of the whole thing about slope. Every lesson will have one of these, and they're built into an embedded presentation that goes along with this lesson. So this is what we do with the launch. This launch the lesson piece, we will try as often as we can to make it real world, but it's an invitation for the students into the lesson. And that's super important for our students because the things like the Ignite activity, the probe, the video, this launch the lesson, they're all about opportunities for every single student in your classroom to have voice. I talked about this earlier in the K5 session. Math anxiety or math phobia, the fear of math, is a real thing in many of our students. The idea behind these types of activities is to relate to the math, to work on conceptual understanding, but to kind of moderate that math anxiety and let every student have a voice. I always hate it in class when I would ask a question and I would have 3 students raise their hand, and typically it was the same 3 students. This is about allowing every student to have a voice. When you use things like this, like the launch, you want to actually have the student think about it independently. Same thing with the Ignite. Then turn to a shoulder partner or 2 other students, join their ideas together, and then discuss it whole group in the class. Okay. Now, I'm going to flick back over to the digital just for a minute before we start to explore and develop the math. I'm going to click back over here. Remember, when I click on Browse, Program Module Lesson. So we are actually in the module on linear relationships and slope. I'm going to click into Lesson 2 on slope of a line. And when I scroll down, one thing you're going to notice is that the way the resources are laid out are exactly the same structure as that lesson plan or the 4 parts of the lesson. Launch, explore and develop, reflect and practice, and the additional resources are my differentiation resources. So if I open my launch up, right here, you're going to see my warm-up and my launch the lesson. You're also going to see today's standards and then the vocabulary. Now, with these resources, typically you can do 4 things. You can assign them. So I could actually assign the launch. Okay. I don't know why you would do that because it's meant to be discussion oriented. Number 2, I can add it to my, I already have it on my calendar. Let me do this one. I can add it to my calendar. That simply puts a link on the student dashboard. Now it's not here because it's already on my calendar. Number 3, I can determine if it's on the student page or not. So like this says visible to students. If they were on this lesson page, it would be there. Or I can hide it. If I hide it, then I have the opportunity to show it. Okay. And then finally, I can add it or remove it from my presentation. So you'll notice the warm-ups in the presentation, the launch is in the presentation. I didn't put the standards in, and I didn't put the vocabulary in. Now, that presentation, then where do I find it? Right here is the launch button. I just click it. Notice I'm going right into the launch of the lesson. So this is 1 of 2 pages. It's the same thing we looked at before. If I go to the second page, let's talk about it. A ride in an amusement park rises 8 feet for every horizontal change of 2 feet. What are some of the ways you could describe the steepness of the line? Now, one thing for my 8th grade teachers, this is also going to be the exit ticket. It's not always the case, but it is one of the options for that. Now, as a teacher, you see your teacher notes here. You can click that open. Okay. If you don't want to see those, if you see the little 3-dot or kebab menu here, you can unclick teacher notes and those teacher notes will not show up. You can bring them back up at any time by clicking on the teacher notes, and I can go back to the first page. The next thing we have is we actually have the warm-up. I switched them. I actually changed where I wanted them. But this is the same warm-up that we were looking at a minute ago. Again, I can just put it on the screen and students can come in. Now, I'm going to take a look here real quick. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to click back out of this, and I'm going to go back over to my presentation, and then we're going to go into understanding. Okay, so we launched a lesson that's about building that curiosity, setting a foundation. We're going to go into a lesson, and what you're looking at now is a student book. I want you to notice a few things on this page. First of all, one, it introduces this explore activity with an inquiry question. How does slope help to describe a line? Now, the explore activity, whenever you see that orange bar, almost going colorblind there for a minute. Whenever you see that orange bar, that's going to mean there's a digital web sketch online that investigates this. You're then going to see a learn. The learn is where we actually then formalize the math. So we're going to talk about slope. What is slope? Slope's the rate of change. In that explore activity, they're going to play around with slope. We're going to look at it in a second. Then I go into a series of examples. These examples build out the idea. They're here in print, but they're going to be digital. And then we come to a check. So an opportunity really quickly to see if students understand what we just did. They can also complete an extra example online. Notice it says that at the bottom of the page. On the left-hand margin, you're going to see the think about it and the talk about it. We know the more students are discussing the math and using the mathematical terminology, the more understanding actually cements itself. And then on the right-hand side of this page, you see the actual explore activity. Okay, that's one referenced on the student page. Not every lesson will start with an explore. If it doesn't start with an explore, it's going to go right into the learn. But you're always going to have those pieces, the explores, the learns, the examples, and the checks. Okay. You'll also have an apply piece, middle school every lesson, high school regularly. Okay, when we go into it. So we really want that discussion going on. So let's look at this digital. If you had a print book and follow along, you would see how the two match up. I'm going to really give reference to it as we're in the digital. So we looked at the launch already. We're going to go then into the explore and develop. Now I'm going to do something really quick. I'm going to scroll down this page and I'm going to do that for a specific purpose. So when I scroll down under explore and develop, I just want you to see how many things are in here. And then when I look at that, okay, there are 22 different tiles in this explore and develop. And you might look at that and think, oh my gosh, how can I do all of these things in a 2-day lesson or however many days the specific lesson is? here's what I want you to know when you look at this. We've taken every piece of this lesson and chunked it into an individual tile. So if you were to go in and look at this, what you would know, what you would see here is that all of this is in like 2 or 3 pages of the student book. We just chunked it for presentation purposes. So I want to look at these pieces individually with you then. Now this lesson actually starts out with an explore the concepts of slopes, and then there's a second explore on horizontal and vertical lines. When we say explore, this is what I mean by this. Now I'm going to click this over and go full screen. And I got to back up because somebody was in this. What you'll notice every time we go into something, it has memory. Whoever was in this last time was on page 8. So here are my teaching notes. Remember to get rid of those. Simply click on the 3-dot menu and uncheck it. But in this one, how can you demonstrate the concept of slope as you travel from one point to another on a coordinate plane? Let's use Web Sketchpad to explore this. So when I go over, by the way, I might as well reset this while I'm here. I'm going to reset all the activities because I already used this, and it'll take it back and erase everything that's been done. So it'll start out how to use this sketch, and I can actually look at it. And then when I look at the coordinate grid, I have a point at 6, 6. Do I think the point will eventually reach the target if I take some steps that go up 1 and over 1? So do me a favor real quick. This is at 0.66. We're going to take some steps. We're going to go up 1 and over 1. If I do that, am I going to hit the target? Just really quick in the chat, give me a yes or no. Really quick, a yes or no. Good. Okay, I got a bunch of yeses coming up. Looks like it. Yep. So if I was a student, though, I might look at the same, not quite sure. They can actually take a step, take another step. Yep, and that did it. If I go up 1 and over 1 at 6, 6, I'm going to hit that point. Now, what they would do then is then go to the next screen, and we're not going to do all these, but what I want you to notice here, we did that. So what other set of values would send the point from start to target? So what in addition to 1, 1 would hit that point right here? So guys, if you don't mind, throw me some ideas in the chat. Other than 1, 1 for vertical and horizontal, what else could I use? Thomas, thank you. I could use 2, 2. Anything else? 0.5, 0.5. Very good. Okay, 3, 3. Now, what I want you to notice here, I can try that. So I could click in here and say, let's make it 2, and let's make this one 2, and let's try it. And that does hit the target. Then I could try 3, 3, but think about this. I could see some students thinking 4, 4 would hit it. But if I do 4, 4 and take 2 steps, it's going to end up at 8, 8. It's not going to end up at 6, 6. But it allows them to play with the idea. So then if we go to the next screen, instead of just doing 6, 6, we're going to move the point around to these different spots and then figure out what would my vertical and horizontal have to be? And you notice it's not going to be duplicate numbers here. They're going to have to switch it up and figure out how to do that. And then as we go through, we're going to think about this one, how many different steps it took, what the path was. And then we'll check some other figures. And then finally, we went into some negatives. And then let's move the start point. What if the start point isn't at 0, 0? What does it look like? But I think you see the idea here. What they're doing, they're having to play with this concept before we formalize the math. Now, a couple different ways you can use these explorers. You could have every student independently do it in a flipped classroom. They do it before they get to class. And we're going to have them play around with it, okay? You could have them do it in pairs or threes. And so if the students had devices, I would have 2 of them shut their device, have 1, and have them work together to do this, to have that dialogue going on. I could do it whole group because right here you have a recording sheet that goes along with that explore activity. Is meant to do whole groups, so students can still record their data. If you're doing an explore activity like this, you don't do the whole thing and go through it. You do part of it, discuss it. But that allows that modeling tool to base the information. Then I go into a series of learns. Here I've got a couple. Let's look at learn slope of a line. Again, this is in the student book. You talk about a learn. This is just really simple. It's laying out the mathematical idea. It's how we've always taught math. The term slope is used to describe the steepness of a line. And they're going to be able to relate this directly to what they did just a minute ago in the explore activity. What's positive slope look like? Okay, that's what positive slope look like. What's negative slope look like? And we're able to bring this up. It's in their book, but have the discussion around, okay, we just looked at slope. What is slope? Okay, so let's take a look at rise over 1. What does rise mean? What does run mean? How does this relate back to what we just did a minute ago? So I would go into that learn, and then we have a second one. Let's talk about learning how we find slope from a graph. And we're going to ask them to take this, so we can take a graph, and we can look at the vertical and the horizontal. We can take that rise, the vertical movement, put it over the horizontal. That actually gives us the slope. And then it talks about positive and negative slope. Again, right in their book, and then we would go into an example. Now, one difference between my 6, 7, 8 and my Algebra 1 Geometry, Algebra 2. They all have the same structure. You're going to notice in this example, there's a little bar graph. What that means is there's a little data check if you assign this. And when I click this example open, this example is in the book. I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to go back to the first page. So this example is the same example that's in the book. We've just made it more interactive here and let you present with it. So I'm going to start out, find the slope from a graph. This graph shows the cost of muffins at a bake sale. So think about it. If it travel from 0.24 to 0.36, what's the vertical rise? And then we're going to go over screen. And we'll look at the definition of rise over run. Notice this one's been done. I'm actually going to reset the activities. That's what I get for using the same demo count, not resetting beforehand. It would start out like this, okay? So let me look at the rise. Let me look at the run. So the slope of a line is 2 over 1 or 2. And immediately I can check the answer. I go to the next one. Gives me a little bit about, I'm going to apply this a little bit differently now. And then this is where the check comes in. Now, in order for the check to come up, it's only one question. The student could start this. This is what the assessment questions look like, whether it's a check or whether it's a formal assessment. The math editor is right here, but they would go in and find the slope of a line for this line. And then if you don't assign it, we'll say this hasn't been assigned, but if you assign it, you actually get the data for it. They have a check in the book, but this is the digital version of that check. So what we've seen so far, the Explorer is mentioned in the student book. You have to use the digital modeling tool. The learns are in the book. The examples are in the book. But for every example, you have an extra example that's not in the book. And this is in case you want to go into more detail. They were struggling with the idea. I want to throw up a fresh example. That example as well is going to be interactive. And what we mean by interactive, checking my time, okay, is exactly this. Find the slope of a line. Each grid square has a linked unit of 1. So I go up 1, 2, 3, and I go over 1. So I could actually click in here, bring up my math editor. I need a fraction. I'm going to say 3 over 1 and accept that. Let me check my answer. Yep, that's what it was. But you'll notice my little need help here. Okay, that's built into that extra example to provide that support for students. Now, the only difference between this and this Algebra, Geometry, Algebra 2, the check was embedded in here. In Algebra, Geometry, and Algebra 2, it will be a separate item. It will have 2 or 3 questions rather than being embedded in the examples. So you're going to see the reason this lesson is probably more than one day is because I start out with my Explorer. I go into my Learn around slope and finding slope from a graph. We do a couple examples. I then go in finding slope from a table. Got an example. Finding slope using formula. And then looking at zero and undefined slope. So that's why we spread a lesson over multiple days, is because we're going into depth into the different idea. So you're going to have the Explorer, the Learns, the examples, and the checks. And then when I scroll down to the bottom of this section, that's where I'm going to see my apply problems. And these are multi-part problems. They are in the book. And so when I back up just a bit, here's the apply problem. So it actually shows what they were doing. It's always got a 4-part structure. Okay. Those pieces make up the Explore and Develop section. All of them can be put in or removed from the presentation when I'm using it. Now, after that, I have my Reflect and Practice. So I'm going to scroll down here and open Reflect and Practice. It's in the book. You're going to see a digital version of it, and you're going to see a Microsoft Word version of it. Okay. But again, just remember, it's in the book, it's digital, it's also in Word. If you were looking at a lesson in the book, it might have like 65 problems, 55 problems. This is going to be a selection of those. We're not going to use them all. We're going to do about 35 of them. Even that's a lot, but that'll be how many will be in this. And then if you need practice that's not in the book, you're going to see we have extra practice right here. And my exit ticket for the lesson is right here. Based off of their performance, I then have some differentiation resources right at the bottom of the lesson. So you're going to see here my language development handbook. If English is not their first language, or even if it is, this contains a graphic organizer for use with the lessons, typically around the vocabulary. My teacher edition, though, for the language development handbook gives multiple strategies for this lesson. These are good for all learners. Okay. There are also leveled suggestions for working through this. And then this is the graphic organizer that is part of that lesson for the student. You're going to see a review learn and a review example. These are on prerequisite concepts. By the way, please jot that down. The review learn and the review example in the lesson are based on prerequisite skills needed for this lesson. How did I know if they need this? Use the unit diagnostic. Okay. Give it before you start the unit. It will identify areas where your students are struggling. And then I have an extension activity, and in this one I have a take another look. The take another looks go from course 1, 6th grade, all the way through algebra. We're looking at adding them to algebra 2 and geometry, but right now they go through algebra 1. In algebra, geometry, algebra 2, you have the quick review handbook that looks at the same thing. But if I click this open, I'm going to scroll over and enlarge it. I'm going to see I always start out with a learn. This is going to approach the topic of the lesson in a different way. Some of you, if you're on K5, saw we had these for K5.
Juanita is a travel planner. She sometimes compares room rates at different hotels.
And she's going to actually get into like constant rate of change and how room rates change. Then students go to do a series of learn and apply, and these are all interactive. They're getting to interact with the math. They're getting to get direct feedback while they're working on it. So it builds the idea out. These take about 15 minutes, but they're a great built-in source for students to go back in and review the material. As you can see, they're answering. Once they answer, they get to see what the correct answer is, or they get to try it again. And then when I get all the way down to the end of this, I'm going to go to the last page. Again, another one of those assessment checks built in for the students. So if I close out of this for a second and just scroll up, you're going to see when we look at this lesson, if I collapse all of them, we started out with the launch. We went into the explore and develop, which is the heart of the lesson. That's going to be the explores, the learns, the examples. in the high school courses, the checks, and then also the apply problems. All of this is in the student book except the extra examples. I then go to reflect and practice. And then finally, the additional resources are my differentiation, okay, based off of how they did on the lesson checks. And then one last thing for my 612 teachers, underneath here, you're going to notice there's a slope video. You can actually add any resource you want to this lesson. I actually grabbed a Khan Academy video on slope. All I did to do that was clicked right here and said, do I want to use it from my computer or something on the web? And if I click the web, give it a name, put the URL in, add it, it shows up just like this piece right here. And you can use it like any other McGraw Hill piece. You can assign, add it to the presentation, add it to the calendar, or make it visible on the student page or hide it. Either one you want to do, okay? So great resources built in here. There's one last thing that I want to show you in the digital. Now, somebody had asked this earlier, how is this organized? Okay, so if I click in, please just remember, all the program resources are here. The module resources are here. Just click on module, and then under the module, all the lesson resources. So if you're looking for the module assessment, click on the module. If you're looking for anything that goes with the lesson, click on the lesson. If you're looking for the professional learning, go to the course resources. K5, if you also were here for K5 or you teach K5, K5 instead of modules is going to have units. It'll be units and then lessons, but laid out exactly the same way. All of my unit materials right here, just like these module materials are right here. Last thing I wanted to show you in this lesson, not only can you launch the presentation, if you click edit, you'll see everything in the lesson and you can immediately remove things, add things to the presentations. I could decide I want the standards, but I want them at the very beginning of the lesson. So you'll notice you can remove this, move this around. And you'll also note, like that Khan Academy video I added, can be moved around in the lesson. I think it's already in here and I just zipped by it. Yes, it's right here, but I could take that Khan Academy video, put it in my lesson, use it along with that. If you are interested in manipulating the assessments, instead of going to the module or lesson, you can go right to the assessment tab. I'm going to click on this line. You're going to see your course bank. That would be your benchmarks, your end of course, your placement diagnostic. You're going to see a practice bank for every module. And if I click this open, you're also going to see your dynamic module practice right here, but you're going to see in the lesson practice, we've actually differentiated different versions of the lesson practice here for every single lesson. An approaching level called reinforce, an above level called reason and apply, the regular level, extra practice, spiral review. And then if I go back one more time under the practice banks, you're going to see your assessment banks. Pretest, the review, your 3 different forms of the on level, your approaching level, advanced level, and then a couple other things built in here for you, like the putting it all together that kind of a practice for multiple lessons at one time. Now, that's just kind of a quick look. Please remember at the program level, you have that quick start course, you have the assessment course to help you, all of that built in. Now, let me look over here. If you'd like to flip the classroom, George, some of the things I recommend starting with students at home. Number one, I would flip it using the explore activities, because that one, I mean, it gives them pretty much information. And then when you come in, you can really work then on building the math out with this. So that's one thing I would use to do that. The other thing I would think about in a flipped classroom are those take another looks. So if you have a take another look, it actually makes a great resource to review on slope before I go into the next lesson. I wouldn't use it prior to the lesson I'm going into. I would use it for the previous lesson, but it's a great way to use that. And then we don't use ExamView in this program. We actually use our McGraw Hill assessment engine. But if you create the assessment in the assessment engine, when you assign it, it shows up on the student dashboard. And then let me look at the chat really quick. Yeah, I mean, you know what, the flipping classroom material, there's a lot of opportunity for you to do that. Yeah, you know, Thomas, we do move the axis, but we move it when we're moving to negative numbers. So I think that's what you're referring to. So I think that's a question. I've got to stop right there, guys, and I apologize just because of the time. The review piece is called Take Another Look, George. Take another look. Okay, so the Explore is a good one to use. The Take Another Look is a good one to use. Also, you know what you could do with the flipped classroom? You could actually either assign or put on the calendar a couple of the extra examples that are not in the student book. That's another great piece to use with that. So I'm going to stop sharing. George, you want to come on and just walk us out?
Thanks, DJ.
You are welcome. And remember, we will send you the recording of this, and then also in that professional learning, please take use of that quick start course and the other PL materials that we have built in.
Very good recommendation for that. Thanks, DJ. And I just want to remind you that we're running a couple of other webinars for the back to school season. I can drop the link in the chat box. There you go. You can register for other sessions as well. Thank you, DJ. You cover everything so flawlessly in just a very short amount of time. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Good to see you guys. Good luck on the beginning of the year, and please take advantage of the other resources that we have.
Thank you. And do let us know if you have any questions at all. Thank you. Take care. Bye. See you next time.
Okay. Bye.